What's a customizable pathway design and how can you use it to enhance your teaching? That's what we're talking about right now. Welcome everybody. I'm Leigh from teachingacademia.com. I'm all about giving you the tools you need to navigate academia and make your best impact. Today, we're going to be having an interview with Matt Crosslin, who's at the University of Texas, Arlington. Matt is an expert in online instruction, and he's got a new book out with several of his colleagues, and he's going to talk to us about one of the concepts that's featured in that book, customizable pathway designs. We're going to learn what it is, why you want to use it, how it can enhance your teaching and your students' overall experiences in both online and face-to-face classes. So let's go listen to what he has to say. All right, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us. I'm really excited today. We have Matt Crosslin from the University of Texas, Arlington. Hi, Matt. How are you today?
Good, good. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. Matt is a researcher at the Link Research Lab at the University of Texas in Arlington. And he's got this fabulous book, if you want to hold it up so everybody can see it. It is Creating Online Learning Experiences. And we're going to have links. You can get a free digital copy. You can also buy the hard copy that Matt just held up. We're going to have links to both of those in the show notes. So after you're done watching this, head on down there, get a copy of the book. And you've got in this book, it's a fantastic book. It's filled with excellent resources to help people think about how to teach online in ways that are really responsive to the online experience, not just mimicking what it means to teach in a face-to-face classroom. And one of the things that you talk about in there is this concept of creating customizable pathways, which is a favorite of mine. I've played around with it. Can you tell us a little bit about what customizable pathways are, how you use them, how people can use them, things like that?
Yeah. They basically came from a MOOC that we did several years ago where we looked at it as a dual layer MOOC. And the idea was when people go through and design a course or you take a course, you usually go through a linear pathway, right? You start at the beginning, you go through the activities and readings, and then you finish at the end. And recently, I guess over the past 10 years or so, we've seen kind of a diversification of that with personalized learning, having different options for people to choose from. Even though it's not truly personalized, that's what they usually call it. And there's connectivism where you don't necessarily take a linear path and you connect with others and kind of map your kind of, hopefully you're learning on your own. Some people call it student-centered learning as well, where the students determine what they want to do. And we noticed though that there are people who need both, right? There's some that really, they're new or they're unsure and they need to follow what the instructor said. And there are people that are experienced or just exploratory and they want to kind of forge their own path. And it was kind of hard to meet both of those needs, and all of those would be in between that in any one class. So our idea was, well, what if we could situate those two options, those two modalities next to each other in the course? And the learners can pick and choose which one they want at any given moment, or even mix the two. And then, in a sense, they would kind of map their own learning pathway through the course content. And if they start off and they say, well, I know this content, so I'm going to kind of go this pathway. I'm going to kind of customize it to my own sociocultural context or my own personal professional goals or whatnot. But then they go along for a few days and realize, well, there's this concept I don't understand. So let's go over here to what the instructor's saying and figure out what they're talking about, right? And then pull that back in. And then go back over here. And then they say, well, okay, the professor's saying that we need to do a paper, but I've done a million papers. I really want to do something a little bit more different for my specific, goal. So I'm going to do this. And so it's also something that gives learners the option to prove what they learned in a way that might be more meaningful for them, might be more useful for them in, say, a future portfolio, or it just might be something that they just want to do creatively and, just stretch, kind of stretch themselves and try something different that they haven't tried. And so that was kind of the general idea. And we've been experimenting different ways. And I've thrown out a lot of different things that call this through the years. So it's been called the dual layer, the customizable modalities, customizable pathways, self-map learning pathways. I mean, we've been trying to come up with a good term for it, and we're just going to see what sticks.
Now you have, because I've played around with this concept, because I learned about this concept from you, I feel like a couple of years ago. Right. And you've got a blog post on this, right, that explains it as well, or maybe several blog posts, right?
Yeah, several blog posts. If you actually go to my website, we can give the link to it. I've put together an entire section on there where you can get all the blog posts, your videos that you've done on it, other research that people have done on it. I try to compile a whole list of all the work that's been on it, whether it's blog posts or videos or research. So we can certainly get it. Just mattcrosslin.com/pathways.
Yeah, and we'll put that link in the notes as well. Now, I think that my understanding of this, how I'm going to explain it, I think it's what I read on your blog post, but I read it a long time ago. So tell me if this is your idea of how to explain it, because I think it is. It's this idea of if you go into like a walled off garden. Is this how you explained it to me once?
Yeah, I've used that for garden and stream.
Walled off garden, right? And you can have a path and you can have a map, and somebody hands you a map and you can stay on the path and you can have that experience that that designer created for you. Or you can go off the path, right, and have your own experience. Or you could do, like you said, you could do both. You could be on the path for a little bit, then kind of step off to one side, do some exploring, and then get back on the path. And then you may or may not get back off the path again. It could be anything like that. And that was very helpful to me thinking about designing my online classes, to think about it, right, in terms of a walled off garden with a path. And you may or may not get off that path.
Yeah, and then I think I wrote the blog post about that after I visited the Fort Worth Botanical Gardens. And, you know, you notice there were just people everywhere, but, you know, there were pathways there, you know, actual, you know, sidewalks there. People would, you know, some people would walk on those and enjoy everything. Other people would just get off and go all over the place, you know, and some people would use the pathways to get to other places and then jump off the pathway. I was like, oh, okay, this is what I've been trying to explain, you know, this whole botanical garden here. So I was like, this is what I like.
Yeah.
So that's why I tried to, I think that's when I had written that post was after that. It's like, oh, okay, this helps me understand too.
And I think it's helpful for this concept because what you're not saying is, hey, just show up and do whatever you feel like doing. So as the instructor, you've got your boundaries and you might be open to creating some new things within those boundaries if somebody has a really good idea, but you've got some boundaries, you've got particular things that you have inside that walled off, you know, garden, right? And so then it becomes a matter of, like, for me, telling my students, if you don't want to think about it, if you want to stay on the path, this is the path. And there are some students that like they just don't want to go off that path. It's too scary. They're not ready for it. They're not comfortable with it. And then there's other students that will, but you've got those options of sort of already planned out for them in terms of how they can craft and put their experience together, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. And that's also some of our research. We found that even students who were comfortable with going off the path sometimes just didn't have the time, right? They're very busy and they just they need to know what to do and move through it because, you know, they're you know, maybe they're, you know, working adult with, you know, who knows how many jobs and trying to take this degree at the same time, right? So they just need the quick, you know, thing as well.
Yeah. So what have you found, or what do you recommend in your book in terms of anybody that wants to take on this approach to teaching an online class? What are some things that they might need to support their students with? What are some reasons why they might want to consider doing it? Because it can also, from the instructor side at first, I remember it seemed really fun, but also overwhelming at first as I was getting into it. So what are some things that people thinking about this should be aware of?
Well, first of all, you know, I would tell people that it's okay to have the limits that you were just talking about, right? It is certainly possible to open this up and just have students go wild, right? But if you're like, we're researching it now inside of a traditional online history course at UTA, one of our 4-credit courses, and there are certain tests and certain assignments that they have to do. It's required, right? So they have these parameters that every few weeks there's a required assignment that everyone has to do, right? And it's fine to have those limits because every topic is different, right? And you kind of have to think about how much flexibility you can give your learners within your topic, because if they're still expected to maybe say study and pass a certain certification, certainly they've got to get the stuff for that, right? So you can definitely be fine with the limits, but you also have to realize that this type of flexibility, a lot of learners are not used to it. You'll find some that are, but you also find a lot that's just used to following what the instructors told them. So you have to give a lot of encouragement, and that's why I like to have the idea of a neutral zone. It can be a blog, or it can even be in Blackboard and a website where you kind of explain the options to the learners and say, here's some options. Here's the main stuff. But if you want to experiment with this and this, here's these options. Here's, if you want to do some Twitter stuff, here's some things to consider about Twitter. Here are the pros and cons of Twitter. We definitely got to, explore, the pros and cons of the technology. I got to be careful recommending using some of these. If you want to blog, here's the pros and cons of blogging. And also the concept of assignment banks that came out of the digital storytelling DS 106 course. I think that's actually one of the concepts in the book that I believe Justin Dellinger wrote about the assignment banks, because I had a lot of people contribute to the book. And he wrote about assignment banks where you actually give a lot of different ideas. And this is what they experimented with in the history course was, here are some ideas, here's the paper that you could do if you want to, but if you wanted to do, a video about it, if you wanted to do this, here's some different options from the assignment bank that you can choose from. So there's a lot of people, call it scaffolding, and so you just have to assume, sometimes people assume that if you just let students do what they want to, they'll figure it out on their own, but that's usually not the case, because they've been inside the system of education that keeps them on that pathway and following what they've been told. So they need a lot of that help. And that's the biggest thing. And there could be lots of other different ways to do that. That's just the biggest thing is like, you're going to have to help your students expand their wings and even encourage them, because sometimes you open it up and they're like, I don't know, they say I can do it, but can I really do it? Will I get in trouble, because maybe not necessarily because of you, but because of other past professors that were instructors that had, they never know. So you also have to give encouragement and say, yes, I want you to do this. So
I think for me, what that brings up too is sometimes students say, okay, if I can make a video, we'll go with this example. If I can make a video instead of doing a paper, I know how to do a paper. I can do a paper pretty well, let's say. I'm really not used to doing video. I have limited experience with that. Some students will pick it because that's their thing, right? Yeah. They're super excited. They have lots, but some students want to push themselves, and then they become worried, well, if I push myself, my grade might go down because now I'm taking on something that's brand new. It's a different kind of skill. It's a different way of representing my knowledge. I'm not comfortable with it. So what do you recommend instructors think about there in terms of students that might be afraid to step off the path because they're afraid it's going to impact their grade in a negative way? Right.
Well, one of my favorite teaching strategies, and I do this in my courses that I get to teach even when I'm adjunct and I'm not, I don't have the freedom to do what I want to, but I always tell students that if you turn in even a rough draft to me early, I'll give you free feedback early, right? And so, and what I just say is, I try to turn the whole grading process into a conversation about their grade. And what I say, and usually in the courses that I teach, we have kind of an open rubric where it's not like a point for this and a point for that, and a point for this. But it's just like, do this and you can get up to 10 points for this, and then here's why. And what I'll just do is I'll just go through and I'll fill out that rubric for them. And I'll say, here's your early feedback. Here's everything I thought, and if this is where you did great, this is where you might want to work on it, and you deal with all this, and your grade is covered, right? And I found that even in traditional courses, that you call it, you say, I'll talk with you early, and they're like, whatever, but for some reason you call it free feedback, and they're like, ooh, it's the same either way, but you call it free feedback, and that conversation about what's happening would really help. Obviously, some students are very busy, and that's a little bit difficult for them. So you kind of have to encourage them that it's okay if it's a rough draft. And you can say, like, I don't need your final paper. I just need your rough draft where you're at, a week out or 2 weeks out. So, and that's the strategy that I think helps in a lot of scenarios, but especially if they're not sure about the end product. And the courses that I've been teaching, usually for University of Texas at Brownsville, which is now University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley, they do have the students experimenting a little bit with stuff that they're not used to as far as creating portfolios, creating blog posts and stuff like that. So I found that system helped those students step out of their comfort zone because they were all used to just doing the papers and tests as well. So that's one strategy at least.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to come on and to share this idea with us about customizable pathway designs, because I find it to be something that as an instructor helped push me in terms of, you know, how I think about teaching and how I design my classes, but then it also pushes my students as well, the ones that want to take me up on that. So I really feel like it's a win-win on both sides. So again, Matt's book, Creating Online Learning Experiences. It's a multi-co-authored book, but you are like the main guy behind that, I think, right?
Right. Yeah.
We're going to put a link to that so you can get the hard copy. If you want the digital copy, we'll have a link to that as well. We'll put a link to your blog post so that people that are interested in this particular concept, it's discussed in the book, but you've got a bunch of specific, more detailed discussions about it on your website. So we'll link to that as well. Thank you very much, Matt.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.